PGA Nation, we are back. And a huge congratulations is in order for the best audience in all of PGA podcasting. Audience has won 4 weeks in a row. This is an unprecedented tear. Audience red hot. They took us down again. So, of course, what we had to do this week is bring in the big guns and bring on the last guest that has won on the King of the Draft show. To take you guys down, we can't let the audience go 5 in a row on an absolute tear. We called the big guns. We called in Joe Nicey tonight to draft with us. Joe, thanks for joining. How you doing tonight?
Thanks, guys. I got an urgent message that the cooler had to come in, shut down the audience. So here we are. We're putting a stop to the streak. We love you guys, but we can't let you show us up. So we're taking back control tonight for the Rocket Classic.
So I don't know if any of you watching are wrestling fans, but if you are, we're basically calling Joe in to beat the streak like we did for Undertaker. Right? We're bringing in the big guns. We can't have the streak continue. So Joe's coming in to take the audience down. It should be a fun draft tonight. A lot on the line. Audience 5 in a row is getting up there with records in a row, which for team audience would be unprecedented. So big night tonight. Big draft at the Rocket Mortgage. Spence, how you doing tonight?
I'm doing well. As you said, the audience would tie the record if they pull it off this week. So there's a lot on the line. And we talked about this last week on this show, Joel, where I unfortunately miscalculated my budget and I was trying to save it for Tommy Fleetwood. And if I would have gotten Tommy Fleetwood into that build with Scotty Scheffler, I think the audience beat me by somewhere between 8 to 15 points. It was, that Tommy Fleetwood thing would have shifted me over the top there. But it was a relatively good week for me on DFS. I'll let you talk if you had any DFS success last week, but went 8-0 in matchups. That is something that I was very happy with. Had that Tommy Fleetwood outright. Unfortunately, Tommy Fleetwood became Tommy Fleetwood down the stretch there. That was very rough to watch, but congrats to Keegan Bradley. Congrats to the audience for winning. And we will do our best to try to dethrone them this week. And as you said, it's the only person in this show's history since we've moved it over to Mayo Media Network that has actually won as one of the guests. So Joe also has a lot on the line. There's 2 winning streaks going between the audience and Joe there.
Big draft, a lot on the line, a lot at stake. And just while we kind of had that on mind, I was heartbroken for Tommy. I just watching it, the whole thing, it's like it felt like it was his. You really were like, at one point on that back 9, you were like, he's going to win it. He's got it. It's finally here. He's going to get his first victory. And then it's not only that he didn't win it, it's the way in that he blew it where you're just like crushed. I feel really bad for him, especially because he's having a really good season. I mean, he's just been playing really good golf. And even before last week happened, I was thinking, when we get to the Open Championship, that's going to be a week to play Tommy, right? It's going to be a course that fits him. He's playing great golf. Like, he's definitely a guy I'm going to want to target there. But after a letdown like this, it's going to be like recency where you want to stay away. And we have a couple weeks to talk through that. But Tommy, like he's hurt or dead. I'm like, Tommy's on my mind this week. I'm crushed for him. And obviously he's not in the field this week, but we still have a draft. So we'll get into the course breakdown. For anyone in the audience that might be new, I'll explain how the draft works, how you can get involved in a moment. But Spence, briefly, tell us what you're looking for this week in Detroit.
Yeah, so we have Detroit Golf Club, 7,370 yards, par 72. You're going to get that mixture of the bent and POA greens. If you listen to everybody that's putting this tournament together, one of the things that you'll notice, and I don't know if they're going to be able to actually get this into fruition and make this be a realistic outcome here, but you always look at the winning scores here. They venture somewhere in that 18 under to 24 under sort of range. Some of the superintendents of the course have said they want to bake this thing out as much as they possibly can. They want it to play firm. They want it to play fast. All of that sounds good on the very surface level of that answer, but the one thing that I will note here is there's rain projected in the forecast. And if rain ends up softening up this course, I unfortunately don't think they're going to necessarily be able to turn it into that sort of venue. So when I ran my model this week, there's going to be that big discussion of how much does distance matter. I do think it's important. We've seen it historically over the last couple of years that distance has mattered. I probably am a little bit lower on the scale than most people would be. Doesn't mean that I didn't weigh it more heavily than accuracy. Doesn't mean that it's not a weight in my model. But what I really was trying to find were good off the tee players in general. And then players that could dominate from 150 yards and in, you get a disproportionate shots that come from that range. You also get very a lot of spike putting that occurs at this course. So to me, it's a second shot course where you need to make putts, and that's kind of how I built my model this week. But if either of you two want to add anything to that mix, go for it. And if not, we can move into the draft.
I mean, I'm pretty aligned with you. For me, I'm really simplifying this week, right? It's really simple. I want people that are going to hit it far and get a lot of birdies. And what Spencer said, there's a proximity bucket that 150 yards and in. The guys that are going to hit it far and can excel in that proximity bucket are the guys I'm looking for. And what's interesting about this field, while it is a full field, it's 156 golfers, top 65 make the cut. A lot of the bottom of the field is almost unplayable. So I don't even feel like it's a full field because there's a lot of guys that are just easy to ignore. So it's probably a smaller field than guys I'm actually willing to play in terms of my player pool, which helped me narrow it down and kind of pick the guys that I like. What about you, Joe? What are you focused on this week?
Yeah, I'm pretty much in lockstep with you guys. I think you both hit the nail on the head. Looking for guys that are longer off the tee. We've seen Bombers have some great success here, but I'm also not going to completely eliminate guys just if they're shorter. It's more of a bumping the longer guys up. The proximity buckets, and guys got to make putts. It'll take a lot of birdies here. Spencer touched on, they're hoping firm and fast. We hear that a lot before a lot of tournaments, and even if we don't get rain, but sometimes they're watering the greens on Saturdays to slow it down for these guys. So I wouldn't put a lot of stock into that. Expect scoring to be really low, and I think they'll probably flirt with. I think the tournament record's 26 under. I wouldn't be surprised if they don't flirt with that this week. So yeah, just got to make a lot of birdies.
No, Joe, you made a really good point that I want to highlight. I think oftentimes in a week like this, when we oversimplify it, people take a hard stance and they only play Bombers and they won't play anyone else. And I think to the point you made, you said it perfectly. I will give the Bombers a bump. That doesn't mean you don't play any of the other guys. I think everyone's in play. It's an easy course. These guys are going to find success. It just means that if you're a tie between two guys, then maybe give the edge to the Bomber. But that doesn't mean only play Bombers and have a lineup with only guys that hit it 310 plus. Everyone can find success this week, and the winning lineup's going to have some guys that don't hit it that long too. So don't get so narrow-minded in it. Just know that's kind of the tiebreaker. That's kind of the edge that you want to go to some of these guys when you're breaking down your picks. As a reminder, if you guys missed the opening of the show, audience, you've gotten 4 wins in a row going on 5. Huge draft tonight. That's why we brought in Joe Nicely. He was the last guest to win the show. We got to bring in the cooler and stop the streak. But we appreciate you guys for coming in there. Albert, Courtney, how you doing tonight? Andrew, we appreciate you guys. You guys let us know who you want to be the audience captain tonight and run the show. First person to drop a draft order in the chat, that will be the order for tonight, and you can be team captain going for your 5th win in a row. In case you are new to the show tonight, a quick explanation about what we're doing here. We're going to have a draft. It's a snake styles draft. We're drafting DraftKings lineups. The one caveat to our draft is you need to be able to afford each golfer in your lineup. So therefore, you can't just take all the best golfers. You need to make sure you can actually afford each player and enter your lineup into DraftKings. When audience is up, you guys will have the ability to everyone to participate and make the pick. My one ask will be when you guys put an order in the chat, that audience goes first or last because it's easier to manage you guys getting 2 picks in a row. Courtney, right on cue. Perfect. I appreciate you. The way you guys can get involved, audience, you'll be going first, Joe second, Spencer third. I will be going last. Anybody, and that starts now since you guys got the first pick, can nominate a golfer. So anyone you might want on your team, just put them in the chat. Any nomination is valid. As soon as a golfer gets seconded, so a second person mentions that person's name, that is the audience's pick. So you can nominate anyone. When that person is dropped in the chat the second time, that locks in your pick. You guys will go first. You only get 1 pick first. Then it's a snake style draft. So audience first, Joe, Spencer, myself. I will have 2, and then we'll go back in the snake. Audience, you'll get 2 on the turn with your second and third picks. I see some nominations already coming in. Is Griffey supposed to be Griffin? Probably, right? I don't know. Is there another Griffey? I don't want to have a gate already in the first pick when the audience is going for their 5th in a row. So, Hank, if you can confirm that's Ben Griffin, we can lock that in. Blind Beauty, you confirmed it. I think it's up there. It is. Blind Beauty, lock it in. Ben Griffin off the board with the first pick. Hey, last week, Ben Griffin, top 30 was my bet of the week. I actually had a pretty big bet on it. It came in for me. Ben Griffin's playing unreal. That's what I said last week. I'll say it again this week. The way he's playing, I have a hard time envisioning him not having a good result. Whether that means he's in the winning lineup, I don't know. But a top 20 to me here this week seems likely for him. That's well he's playing. So I love Ben Griffin. I think it's a really good first pick. Audience off to a great start. Joe, what do you think about Ben Griffin this week?
Yeah, I love Ben Griffin. He was definitely in consideration for me. One of the hottest players in the world. Really coming into his own. I mean, you can make the argument he's maybe the most improved golfer on the PGA Tour this year. And this course sets up well for him. So really like that pick by the audience. Kind of mad that they grabbed Ben there, but we'll have to figure something out now.
I think that was a good point, man. Just for some fun, because I think I liked what you said there. I would agree. I would say he's probably leading the votes for most improved. If you had to give a top 3 for most improved golfers on tour this year, Griffin being one of them, who else would you put on that top 3?
I think another guy that's in this field, I'll go ahead and kind of spoil that. Harry Hall's impressed me with his play. Really liked what he's doing. I mean, there's some big droppers I can think of. Yeah, I'm trying to think of guys that have
the risers. I agree.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of the risers. I'm only thinking of guys that are falling right now. But yeah, Ben Griffin, Harry Hall,
Andrew Novak in the chat.
Novak, yeah, that's a great one.
I had Bud Cauley. I think he could be in that conversation.
Yeah, I mean, JJ Spawn won a major. I think you have to include him. There's more subtle increases that we've seen. So, like, this to me are players that would be, fringe top 20, 25 players that have probably become solidified top 10 names. So we're not talking about necessarily the Novaks of the world or even Harry Hall to where they've jumped into that new stage. But I think if you look at a Russell Henley, a Maverick McNeely, those names have really gotten more solidified on tour as we moved along. And then you look at the Andrew Novaks of the world, the Ben Griffins, the JJ Spawn who won a major, like a lot of those names make sense, I think.
Yeah. And even if we're looking at guys that we know are great players, but if we're just comparing it to last year, I think you got their JT out there. Had a terrible year last year. Really bounced back this year. So, and there's a lot of guys that have kind of went down. I mean, there's some guys in this field even that we can talk about. Morikawa, Tony Finau. Cam Young is kind of made a resurgence here lately, but he's really kind of fall off. So it's interesting what these guys do from year to year, and you think you know a guy, and you kind of maybe pigeonhole him a bit, and Ben Griffin has shattered those expectations. A really legitimate Ryder Cup candidate. So lot to like with Ben. I think he's a great pick this week. So the audience started things off strong, trying to continue that win streak.
All right, Joe. Well, you got the second pick here. How you following it up?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of ways you can go. Joel, you and I were talking a little bit before the show. Not much that I really like below the 7K range.
Yeah.
And last time I was on the show, I kind of took the strategy of taking my favorite value pick first. So I think I'm going to lock in Steven Yeager.
Wow.
At 7,700, my favorite value pick. I know Spencer locks him this week as well, but things can kind of get thin as we work our way down the board. And he's definitely a standout for me in that 7K range. I like his ability to make birdies. He's got 2 top 10s here in the last 3 years. Playing solid, not great golf, but this is the type of course that suits his game well. He's picked up that extra speed off the tee. I think that'll pay dividends. So we'll start things out with Steven Yeager for me.
I like the pick, and as a former champion and king of the draft winner, I think it's a wise strategy to go value first. Get that off the board, as that can get more competitive than even the top of the board. So solid pick there, Spence. Joe already said, he said you're into Jaeger this week. Would love to hear your take on Steven Jaeger, and then you're up with your first pick.
Yeah, I mean, he's probably one of my favorite values on the board for a lot of the reasons that Joe just talked about. There's the 2 top 9 finishes over the last 3 years. And I think when we look at the ownership with him, like I currently see, and I'm just running numbers right now. They're not exact. I literally was updating them as the first picks were being made right now. But I see Jaeger at about 12%. I think you could make a strong argument that in this field with his skill set, if you had any semblance of form that was being shown on paper, it's probably like a $9,500 golfer. To me, this is a mispricing because of what we've seen recently from him. But even if you dive into some of the data, some of the more recent metrics in some of the areas like him, and what I like most about him is the profile for this course. There's a reason why he's found success here in the past. There's he has the added distance you're looking for. He thrives from that proximity bucket from 0 to 150 yards. He's also a streaky putter. And that's not something that Jaeger's always been throughout his career. Like, when he gets hot, he can get really hot. So I think that you take that distance, you take the proximity numbers, you take the putter into play. This is one of those plays that whether you're talking about an outright bet at that 75, 80 to 1 mark, or you're talking about a DFS play here in the $7,000 range, I just think there's a lot more upside than's meeting the eye with a lot of people. And in reality, that would have been my first pick also. So nice selection there from Joe.
All right, off the board, Spence. Now you got to scramble. Who are you going with your first pick?
So I'm going to take the golfer. Funny enough, I wrote this in my Rotoballer article this week. A name like Jaeger for me was a very standard, like I always run things to try to see who most resembles past winners of golf tournaments. And what I tried to do is I took last week's tournament, which I know has no correlation to this one. I was just trying to figure out what players in my model most correlated with the players who found success last week when you look at some of these upside and safety marks. And the funny return of that is the most like standard return of the Tommy Fleetwood of this field was Steven Jaeger. That doesn't mean he's necessarily going to find success, but that's what my model thought, this high-end appeal at a price tag that was too cheap. The golfer for me that was the most similar to Keegan Bradley, I don't mean skill set wise, I just mean build in my model, was Davis Thompson. So I'm going to take Davis Thompson here. There's a little bit of negative trajectory, at least from the price we're looking at for upside, but I think this is one of the safest players that you have on the board. I do think he has real upside to still win this golf tournament. And if you look at these golfers from $8,000 and up, he is technically, with Jaeger being in that $7,000, I believe $700 range, Davis Thompson is the best value that I have on the board of those high-end guys. So I'll go a little bit of a fringe value play here with Thompson and build out from there, because I think a lot of these names at the top are very easy to build around. Like I don't see a massive difference between them.
Boom. All right. There you have it. Davis Thompson off the board. So value coming off early, which I kind of like. I think that's good strategy. Brian, welcome to the draft. Welcome back. We're having some fun again. As a reminder, audience going for their 5th in a row. Could be an historic week here on King of the Draft. All right, I got 2 here, and I'm going to follow suit with my first at least. I'm starting with value. I'm going to go with the guy who's been playing really well. I do think his ownership is creeping up a little higher than I'd like, but we'll find ways to get different somewhere else. And with my first pick, I'm going to go ahead and take, and let me just confirm the price here before I mess this up. Yep. I'm going to take 7,400 Emiliano Grillo. Playing really well, striking the ball really well. If you look at his last 4, he gave you a T20, T16, T24, T19. This should be a course that suits him. You should roll up a lot of birdies. Again, I think this price, if he had put him at 8,400, I wouldn't have batted an eye. So I think it's a really good value this week on the board. And then I'm going to pair him with a guy that already got mentioned at the top of the board. I'm going to take the first higher priced golfer. And that's going to be Spencer. You're laughing. I don't think it's the guy that you think it is, but I'm going to take Harry Hall.
That's who I thought it was. That's who I wanted.
Yeah, I'm going to take Harry Hall here. Listen, he's doing everything well, but the biggest thing this week, it's that hot putter. I mean, he's striking the ball well. He's great around the greens. But if he gains 2 or 3 strokes putting on this course, he's going to get you another top 10 at only 9,500. I think he has as much upside as anyone in this field. I think he can go out and win this tournament. And I think there's a little bit of value in play, the fact that he's 9,500. I do think he's priced right. I don't think it's too cheap, but I love that upside in the way he's playing. So give me Harry Hall. Spence, we'll go back to you here. Obviously, you liked Harry Hall. Were you also interested in Grillo?
Yeah, I think they're both very good plays. Grillo makes a ton of sense. There's a million ways that Grillo popped in my model. He kind of has that similar build to Keegan Bradley last week, too, if you're trying to find one of those names that might win this golf tournament in that general range there. But, the Harry Hall thing, and you might be flirting a little bit too close to disaster here, Joel. Did you see that he was in an ambulance on Saturday for I don't know if it was, I guess it was after the round, where he got sick and he didn't pull, or maybe it was before the round and he didn't pull out of the tournament and he ended up storming up the leaderboard late. But I mean, if you take that factor out of account.
Oh no. So I apologize. I didn't have the draft board up. That was my bad. I brought it up and then it kicked Spencer off and then I couldn't bring it. So Spence, just so you know, so you don't know, I didn't think you were stuck. I've told you this before. The bottom line, I can't click, so I can't bring you back on. So when you were off, I couldn't get you back. You have to do it yourself. So I apologize for cutting you off. It was my bad. I brought the draft board back up. Spence, please finish your thought.
Great pick. We'll leave it at that. Well, you know what? Let me add one more thing to it because I think it is worth having this discussion. He was one of the first outright bets that I put out this week, and I know people see that number at 40-1, and yeah, I mean, is Harry Hall healthy? That's the question here that we're trying to figure out is he actually sick or is he not? I'm going to just trust his words. He fought through it. He seems to be okay. He hasn't withdrawn from this tournament. He was one of the first outright bets that I put in. I think there's a lot of upside here with Harry Hall this week.
Of course, I have him, and there's going to be the withdrawal risk that is now in play. So the low risk, yeah, I like it. We'll roll the dice, and hopefully we get a good result. All right, so Spence, you got your second pick. You got Davis Thompson. Where are you going with your next pick?
I would love Jaeger. I would love Harry Hall. I would love Ben Griffin. All these names that are off the board are kind of probably the optimal routes that people have started. But I'm going to continue with value here. I'll figure out this top of the board later. As I said, I don't really see a massive difference between a lot of these names, but I'm sure I could save them till later. I only see 7% on this play right now, but I'm going to take one of your favorites, Joel. Don't know if you would have taken him this week, but I'm going to take Ryo Hitsatsune at $7,200. Top 10 in my model in a lot of the key metrics of what I was trying to find, which includes the weighted strokes gained total geared towards Detroit Golf Club. So I really, really like his profile for this tournament. I think you and I, Joel, whether you agree for this tournament remains to be seen, but I think you and I have been much higher than public consensus on him, what feels like for a very long time. And for me, this is kind of one of those courses where he can really pop at. And for a GPP contest, at 7% ownership at $7,200, I am more than willing to find out if he's actually able to put that together because it opens up the world for me everywhere else.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's definitely 100% someone I'm going to be playing this week. If you look deeper in, his ball striking has been really good. He's awesome around the greens. He can spike with the putter. It's going to be a little harder this week to find these value plays in the 7K range, but for me, Ryo is definitely planted in there. I mean, he got you a T6 recently at the Charles Schwab, so you certainly know that there's upside. I really like that pick there. Joe, how about you? Are you going to play any Ryo Hitsatsune this week?
Yeah, he was definitely on my list. I think you guys are picking off some really strong value plays. I had Grillo on my list as well as a value play. So really like where you guys have gone there in the 7Ks. I like those plays a lot.
All right. Well, the value has been endorsed. And like I said earlier, the value come off the board early can leave you in a bind. Joe, you got your second pick here. You got Steven Jaeger. Who are you going to take with your second pick?
A lot of ways to go. I just don't think it's a week I'll be getting all the way up to the top of the board. At least that's kind of where my mind is right now. So there's a lot to like in the 8 and the 9K range. Like your pick of Harry Hall. Loves Spencer's pick of Davis Thompson. He's a guy I was looking at coming off his best tee to green week of the year last week at Travelers. So really like Davis there. Not a lot of course history with him, but he's just kind of been my guy this year. Just somebody I've been kind of just plugging in and chugging along. I'm gonna go with Keith Mitchell. at 8,800. I think the tee to green play's been excellent. Off the tee's been great. One start here, missed the cut last year. I'm not really worried about that. He's had some hiccups putting 4 rounds together. A lot of that can be traced back to around the green issues. Again, not something I'm really worried about this week. I think he's going to put himself in great position off the tee. We know he can get hot and make birdies, and just really great results. And the stats kind of back it up that he's playing really good golf from tee to green. So go with Killer Keith.
I like that's a good pick. I like Keith Mitchell this week. I was taking a good long hard look at him. Even if you dive deeper into the strokes gain metrics, I mean, he's absolutely killing the ball off the tee. He's been great on his approach on his irons. Even with his putter, he's been pretty good. I mean, he lost strokes putting last week, but at the Canadian Open a couple weeks ago. But before that, I mean, he's been gaining strokes putting every week since March. So I think there's a lot of upside there with Keith Mitchell. I really like that pick. Audience, you are on the clock. You need 2 here. It looks like there's at least 1 nomination in, so get as many nominations in as you can to lock in those 2 picks. While we wait, let's go back to you, Spence. Are you going to be playing Keith Mitchell at all this week?
I think he's a fair value. I think it's a good price for him. I had him exactly fair at 8,800. I see less than 15% ownership right now. I have no reason to talk anybody out of playing Keith Mitchell. He's a top 15 player in my model this week.
All right, lock that in. As well, the first pick is locked with Clanton off the board, the youngster getting picked. Clanton's striking the ball really well. I think Clanton's an interesting pick here from Team Audience. Let's go back to you here, Joe. Is Luke Clanton on your radar this week?
Yeah, definitely. I think he's a top play. Was going to be my next pick, actually, if the audience hadn't grabbed him. It's kind of easy to forget just how good he was last year playing in kind of these spot starts as an amateur. We saw him almost win a couple of events. I think the Kentucky event, he actually went off as the favorite as an amateur, which I'd never seen before. But the dude's really talented. Hits the ball a mile. The ball speed's up there with, Rory and Potgeider and these dudes. So I think he's going to be a force on the PGA Tour. He's built for the modern game with his speed off the tee and kind of an interesting angle. This is going to be the second time he's seen this golf course. He played this golf course last year, had a T10 as an amateur, and for the first time as a pro, he's getting to see a course for the second time. So it'll be interesting to see how he handles that.
Oh, all right. That pick is endorsed. And finally, it took some time, but the second pick is locked in with Chris Gotterup. Another guy I was looking at. This guy has been really hitting the ball well at 8K. He's another value pick I like. My only concern with Gotterup is that putter. I mean, he really has been struggling to make putts. He's going to have to make a few putts this week to really make a run and get into it. But if he can make a few putts, I mean, there's a ton of upside with the way he's striking the ball. So Chris Gotterup, off the board, Spence. We're going to move it over one. We got it in the wrong slot for Team Audience. We got up. And then Joe, you are back on the board here with your third pick.
Yeah, Gotterup's good play. Kind of taking the bomber angle. I get it. Definitely had him on my maybe list. It's shaking out to be kind of a mid-range, solid type of week for me. I'm going to go with the player who is trying to work his way back up into golf's elite. I'm going to go with Matt Fitzpatrick at 8,400. Just starting to see some signs. I think, a couple years ago, Fitz is, Spence, a 10K plus player in this field. So we know the pedigree's there. And there have been some positive signs lately. And at 8,400, I like the upside he brings to the table. I mean, he's fighting right now, trying to get in shape for the Open. Got the Ryder Cup considerations kind of to think about. FedEx Cup playoffs. He's outside looking in right now. So he's motivated to play well. That's why he's showing up this week. And I like the price point. So I'll kind of stay on my solid mid-range build with Fitzy. I'm
laughing, Joe. I like the pick. Everything you said. He's a guy that 2 years ago, maybe 3 years ago, he was a 10K golfer. He hit us a lull, and he's starting to climb back up. He's playing well. But I'm laughing because before we went on air, we were both like, you kind of have to go stars and scrubs this week. There's no other way. And you're finding that middle ground here with this building.
Man, you gotta take what the draft board gives you. That's what's so fun about these things. It kind of makes you think differently than maybe how you thought you would about lineup building.
Exactly. And it's working. I like the way that you got a good start here. So maybe you don't have to go stars and scrubs this week. Should be interesting. Spence, would love to get your take. Are you on Fitzpatrick and Goddard up this week? And then you're up with your third.
Yes to Fitzpatrick. Goddard up is probably a TBD on it. Market really likes Goddard up, and I think it makes sense. Like, he was one of my biggest exposure bets that I had at the U.S. Open. I had him to make the cut. I had him in a bunch of individual matchups throughout the tournament. Once he imploded on day one, and he worked himself up that leaderboard very nicely over the next 3 days. So I certainly think he's somebody you can consider. The only thing I would say is the argument that Joel brought up, like, can he make enough putts? And do we have a price hike because of what we've gotten from him recently? But market likes him, don't really have a negative thing to say about him. I'm going to take a different approach from what everybody else has done at this moment, because I feel like we're all in this value zone, kind of playing chicken at this point, trying to figure out who's the first one that's going to go to the top. And I'm going to go to the very top, and I'm going to take Colin Morikawa here. I understand that the ball striking did not look the way that you would want it to be at the Travelers, and the putter has been putrid now for a couple of weeks. But I think this is one of those prime get-right spots for Morikawa. To me, like I said, this is very between him and Cantlay. If you're trying to decide between the two, like, it feels like a coin flip for me. You could even throw Bradley in there if you want to have that discussion. But I'm going to go with the player who is the actual number one golfer in my model, and just not think otherwise if everybody's going to let the value fall. And I think maybe even this draft ends up being an indication to where normally the highest priced player, we see them go in the first round. So for me to now be taking him at the 303, we're going to probably continue to see that trend throughout the week, to where I would not be shocked to see this Morikawa ownership just continue to go downwards.
I agree. I mean, if you're going to get Morikawa at a low ownership, then he just makes a ton of sense. It depends what the ownership is. He hasn't been playing great, but he's not lost. I mean, Morikawa can easily go out and win this tournament. So I like that pick there. Not the guy I was going to take. I'm glad it fell to me. I know people don't like doing this. It kind of like makes people cringe a little bit. I'm going to take last week's winner. I'm going to take Keegan Bradley. He's been striking the ball great. The biggest thing with Keegan is he's making putts. And if we can get a Keegan Bradley who's sinking putts, that's a very dangerous man. He gained almost 7 strokes putting last week. If he gets, I don't even need him to gain 7. If he's positive putting with the way he's striking the ball in this field, I think Keegan's going to get you another really good result. So I love Keegan this week, and mainly just because of how watered down the field is. And I think it's another spot for him to shine. I don't think he'll have as big of a win hangover this week, just because it wasn't like he won a major or anything last week. I mean, it was a nice win, but I think he comes back again this week and gives you another really good showing. So I like Keegan there. And then I'm going to take my next value play here, and I'm going to lean into what we said in the beginning of the show, right? We want bombers. We can get a value play who can really bomb the ball, and that's who I'm taking here with, and I'm going to butcher his name. Is it Potgieter? Potgieter? Potgieter. Potgieter? Is that how you say it?
Yeah, I think you got it, man.
Got it. All right.
Hey, I say a lot of names funny. It sounds great to me.
Listen, the guy is going to smash the ball, and that's why I'm taking it. It's only $7K. If you're saying there's a course edge by being able to mash it, well, he's certainly going to have it. And if you look at the Charles Schwab, which was his last tee off at the end of May, he gained 5 strokes off the tee. He also gained 2.5 strokes putting and gave you a top 10. If you get anything resembles that, I think you get another really good result here. His biggest weakness is typically around the green game, which I think kind of the point you made, Joe, that should be neutral. There shouldn't be a huge concern here. So I think as a 7K guy, he offers a lot of upside. Maybe a top 20 or maybe even another top 10 at that price would be gravy on top. Spence, you're up with your fourth. Would love to get your take on Potgieter before you go.
I don't know if I have one, Joel. I mean, you are correct. He bombs the ball off the tee at a higher rate than everybody else if there is a distance advantage, and that ends up coming to fruition. Names like him, Cameron Champ, all these names have a chance to pop maybe higher than a model would project them. So I think based off of that alone, what is his projected ownership right now?
I'm seeing 9%.
Okay. Yeah, I guess I see 8%. So, I mean, I guess that'd be a little bit concerning on the ownership because I think the same thing's happening with Cameron Champ. It looks like he's 10.5% because of that distance narrative. But I can't say that you're incorrect on distance being probably more of the avenue you want to be diving down. So, I mean, I think it's fine on the surface of that. Trying to figure out what I want to do with my next pick. There's a lot of different routes that I can go here. I guess I'm just going to go back towards the top of the board and kind of, or near the top of the board, since we all seem to have salary left at this point. So I'll just try to grab a name and kind of get myself away from everybody else. I will take Max Grazerman at 9,100. Byron and I talked about this on the show last week. We even talked about it afterwards, Joel, after the show, where we both were like, yeah, we like Grazerman a lot. And he faltered on the final day and he moved down the leaderboard in the wrong direction. But there's a lot to like with Grazerman's profile, specifically for this course. And even with some of the statistical return that you're getting from him, you look at that total driving, which is going to add some of that distance, that short proximity, the weighted putting. He's the sixth player in my model. And if you add that to him also being sixth in my model at strokes gained total at easy scoring courses, I think he is one of those names that really ends up popping in a lot of models that you're going to build. And it's one of those names that's left on my card that I bet to win this golf tournament. So, I do think this is a fair price tag here at 9,100.
9,100. Take him off the board, Max Grazerman. One thing I thought that I like Grazerman, some of the reasons we were talking about last week, I think my concern was the price. I was just like, at 9,100, is there someone else up top I want to get? Now, this conversation is different, not in the draft, because a lot of those guys are no longer available, so you got to take, someone else. But that's kind of where I was thinking with him is just I thought I wanted to go somewhere else up top. But I do see it. I see what you're saying there, and there is upside. So Grazerman off the board. Joe, would love to get your take. Are you interested in Max Grazerman this week?
Honestly, not looked at Grazerman much this week. I've played him a lot this year, especially earlier in the year. I've kind of been following in that Luke Clanton, Keith Mitchell, Harry Hall area around that price range. So I think he's a pretty interesting pivot there from an ownership perspective. I think we'll see him lower owned than the other guys in that range, which kind of makes him interesting in GPPs.
I mean, and I think you both brought up a really good point with that because one, you are correct, Joel. There's a lot of different routes and avenues that we have to go down because names get taken. I think the second thing is that you both said a lot of times we have to make decisions in GPP contests. We cannot play every single golfer. And a lot of these names that end up being fringy one way or another, it doesn't mean that we dislike that player. It doesn't mean that we wouldn't even consider that player. All it means is that if you compare Max Grazerman, as Joe said in that example, to a Harry Hall, a Keith Mitchell, he's going to go more in that direction of those two. I'm probably going to lean more in the direction of Grazerman. I think at the end of the day, they're all top 15 players in this tournament, and it's kind of pick your poison when you're trying to put this together. And I don't think any of them are bad plays at the core.
I think it's a good point. And especially when you start breaking this down, you look at it, you end up seeing these tournaments where you're like, oh, the obvious pick didn't make it, but the next guy was great. We all just should have gone to the next guy, right? And that's the point Spencer's making, where we're kind of trying to give you who those next guys are and try to get away from the chalk, which is kind of how you can pivot with a guy like Max Grazerman. So really good point there. Joe, you're now up with your fourth pick. You got on average $8,300 to spend, the most salary left of anyone. Where are you going from here?
I think you could go with Cantlay. I don't know that I have to with the build I've got going. So I'm going to take a guy that I'm probably going to be underweight on this week, but I think he's one of the most interesting players on the board. We definitely need to talk about him. So I'm going to take Cameron Young at 9,300. Seen a lot of stuff on Twitter about Cam Young lately, especially this week. So I'm interested to hear your guys' thoughts on him. Great course history. I mean, he's played this tournament twice. He's got a runner-up and a T6, I believe. And we've seen him kind of be all over the place with his game this year, playing terribly to start the year, and has come on lately. Top 10 at the Truist back in May, top 5s at the Canadian Open, at the U.S. Open. Was playing well last week, and then the wheels kind of came off. So we know he bombs it. We know he locks his course. We know the putter's been working. So I think there are some things in his favor, but I'm curious what you guys think of Cam Young this week.
I also think it's interesting that they priced him at 9,300. I thought he would have been higher by the way he was playing. I mean, he's going to be chalky. The ownership is going to be. He might be the highest owned golfer, if not second to Ben Griffin. But I thought he would have been priced higher based on the way he was playing. So it's an interesting pick. I'm surprised he lasted as long as he did to get to you here. Audience, we need that pick. I see a few nominations in, so I think it looks like the first is finalized. We'll wait for a few more to finalize that second. While we wait, let's go to you, Spencer. Are you going to play Cam Young this week?
I think it really circles back to the discussion that we just had about what we are choosing and who we are picking in ranges. Like Byron and I kind of both last week gave a very scathing report of Cameron Young, and it didn't look so good after day one, to where he first double bogeyed and then he shot a 5 under when it was all said and done, and then it kind of the wheels fell off on him. This is a much better course fit for him. I can understand why he's the most popular player on the board. I don't even dislike the pick. I think it makes logical sense. I don't think I'm going to play Cam Young this week because for me, if one, I would rather play Harry Hall and names like that. And two, if I'm trying to find a way to get different, to me, Hideki might be like that pivot at sub 10%, to where if nobody's playing Hideki, there's upside to be found in that sort of return of a golfer at his very best. He's, first, second, third, fourth best player in this tournament. I don't know if he's there right now, but for that reason, I probably would say I'm also going to be lower than consensus on Cameron Young, but he's the 7th overall rated player for me. Most weeks, Cameron Young's like in the bottom half of the field. So this is like the most robust return I've gotten from him in a really long time.
Boom. All right. There you have it. Audience 2 picks are locked in. Akshay Bhatia and Alex Smalley, which is crushing because Smalley was going to be one of my last picks. So I'm going to have to pivot here. I really like Smalley. I'm not as high on Bhatia, but I really like Smalley this week. I think he's getting overlooked. I think some of the guys in that area are more popular. I think he's a great pivot on a guy with a lot of upside who's playing well. So I really like the Smalley pick. Joe, how about you? Are you interested in Alex Smalley this week?
Yeah, really was. He was probably coming off if the audience didn't take him right there. So really like Alex Smalley, like his tee to green ability. He's a player I've kind of been a pet player of mine for the last few years when he was kind of first breaking on the PGA Tour, and we've seen him do some really big things when he gets the putter going. It's not always there, but I like his upside.
Ooh, all right. Joe, you're up now with your 5th. You got Young off the board. You got about 8K per pick left. Who are you taking here?
Good question, Joel. Like I said, I really had Smalley on my radar. Luckily, I feel like I've got some flexibility to do some things. I'm going to go with a player that I really don't like as a person, but I think in this spot I'm gonna take a chance just because I like the course fit. Bombs it off the tee, showed a little bit of life last week. We know we can get hot with the putter. That's Wyndham Clark at 8,600. So not a big Wyndham fan. Never have been. Spencer knows this, but in this spot this week at 8,600 in this field, I feel like you can take a swing. We know kind of driver heavy is the recipe for him, and the putter can get going. He can make plenty of birdies.
I think it's a really good pick at only 8,600 and sub 10% ownership, close to 10% ownership. You saw him flash last week. You certainly know there's upside, but the mainland, this is watered down field. This seems like a spot for him to be able to rise up. So in terms of being different, right? If you're not going stars and scrubs, which you're not here in a balanced play, which is going to be a unique build. I like what you're doing here with this line. So I think that was a really solid pick. Spence, would love to get your take. Are you interested in Wyndham Clark this week?
I mean, one of the most egregious things ever said on this show I understand the whole world hates Wyndham Clark at this point, but everybody knows how I feel about Wyndham. He'll always have a soft spot in my heart, regardless of how many locker rooms that he damages. And F-bombs that he drops on the course.
Spencer's going to hang on to that Pebble Beach forever. Spencer can
hey, and the U.S. Open. Those two things will ride for the rest of time. Like, the way I view it is, like, my first big taste of when I was trying to make it in this space, and I wasn't even writing at this moment. I hit Jason Day at the PGA Championship in 2015, and that got me a little bit started into like this industry of trying to like be able to be on the internet and do things. And then Wyndham Clark, to me, is probably the most significant hit that I've ever had when I had it at the US Open, just because it was on an Action Network show. It got me a ton of publicity on that. Like, I don't know how many followers I have to this day. I would say probably 8% of those people came from that Wyndham Clark win that occurred. And we followed that up at Pebble Beach in the shortened event, to where one of the best times I've ever had, Joe, was inside of the Rotoballer chat, to where there was a circus going on trying to get that tournament canceled. Like, everybody was writing into the officials. We were all trying to get that tournament stopped. We were all trying to get every negative weather report that you could find, send it to Jay Monahan, get this thing canceled. And even Wyndham was on the internet trying to get the tournament canceled. So I'll always have a soft spot for him. And I agree with the pick, though. Like, that's the more important thing here. I turned to my girlfriend when I was watching the tournament last week, and I told her, I really think Wyndham Clark looks like he's trending towards being back at this point. We saw that from a statistical perspective, and like entering the weekend, he should have been in 4th place in that tournament, according to my model. And he continued to move himself up the leaderboard from there. So perfect course recipe for why he would find success. I guess I'll move into my pick, though. So I'm trying to figure out what I want to do here. There's essentially 2 names at the top for me. Not the top, but the top of my range that I can actually get to, that I'm trying to decide between. I don't know if I actually have a decision between those 2 yet. And I'm kind of hoping that somebody will make that choice for me on this. So I'm going to go into this $6,000 section that everybody seems to not want to be in this week. And I'm going to take one of the names that I actually do like playing and think has playability in this tournament. I'm going to take Henrik Norlander at 6,900. The thing that I liked most about him inside of my model, if you look at the recent course or the recent form that he's put together, 52nd, 59th miscut, 45th, 18th. There's not a ton there that's going to necessarily be where you can hang on to that and feel super great. But I've always told people, I run my model from a longer term perspective, and the longer term numbers like him. More so than that, though, if you just look at the weighted recent form, so that's taking the standard returns that you've gotten from past top 10 finishers here off the tee approach, around the green, and putting. So that's taking out of 100% of what they need to do to find success. And you weigh that, the current stats over the last 24 rounds of all those negative results that I talked about for Norlander, he's still graded inside of the top 15 of my model in that area. I think a lot of that is the uptick that you see in those key areas that I talked about, you know, whether that be the recent approach play that we've seen from him. That's one of the big things that's pushed him in the right direction. Even if you look at his putting on easy scoring courses, like that's another thing that catapulted him. So I think this is a spot where you can get different in this $6,000 section. As I said, there's a couple names that are a little bit higher than this that I hope somebody takes, so it makes my life a little bit easier.
Boom. All right. Off the board. Lock it in. I used to really like Henrik Norlander. I haven't obviously played him very much recently. As you picked him, I just kind of pulled it up and did a little deep dive. He really is striking the ball really well. I think if you just look at his ball striking, that's excelling. If he can hit that driver and make a few putts this week, I certainly think there's upside. So if you're diving to the 6K range, I think Norlander's in play. I am considering a quick pivot, but as I look into it, I think I'm going to stick to what I have. I'm going to try one thing real quick to see if that changes anything. Just want to see if I can afford to do this. I kind of can. All right, I'm not going to do it. I was going to go crazy and like sink down and take like a minimum price guy so I can take a decky and have that, but I'm not, because I don't want to take the minimum price guy that's not going to make the cut and ruin my whole lineup. So we're going to stick with what we originally did. The first pick I'm going to take is Benny Ann. I think Benny Ann could have gone a few rounds earlier. I think he's going to be a really good value play this week. The driving distance is there. Even the recent form, he's giving you some pretty good results recently with his top 15 of the Travelers. He gave you a top 10 of the Canadian Open. If he makes a few putts this week, I think Ben An can get you another top 10 and really compete in the 7K range. So I like Ben An. Now, my last pick was going to be Smalley, but Smalley went off the board. So I'm going to pivot here, and I'm going to take okay, who did I decide was my pick going to be here? Yeah, I'm going to take Kirk Kitayama. He's another guy who I think it's just going to be a good course fit. What you've seen with him recently, he's really been hit or miss. So you're really going to kind of betting on he has a good week and finds it. But in terms of ball striking, that's certainly one of his biggest strengths. He can get the ball out there. He hits it far. The putter has been kind of the wild card. I mean, he lost 4.5 strokes putting at the Canadian Open. But then he gained a stroke and a half to Charles Schwab. If we find the version of him that gains stroke putting, I think you get a really good result from him. Bent grass, which is what we're going to have this week, is typically his better putting surface, so he's going to have that edge. I think there's plenty of upside here with Kirk Kitayama at 7,500. So lock it in for my team. I'll leave 600 on the table, which I have no problem doing. Spence, how about you? Are you interested in either or both of Benny Ann and Kirk Kitayama?
I feel like I'm always interested in Kirk Kitayama, and I'm not so sure it's ever actually gone right for me, Joel. So I don't know if that's a negative answer towards your team. Market likes him a lot, though. That's one of the things that I noticed as I was running some of the sharp action into my model. He is a substantial favorite against noteworthy players. I saw him stretch out up to in the minus 130s against Taylor Moore, and I don't like Taylor Moore this week. That's not necessarily even the answer there, but Taylor Moore is a golfer that is a top 10 machine at this tournament. So I think you at least have to look at that and realize like the market is pushing in the direction of him against a lot of golfers that are either somewhere in the middle there of playability or playable. So I think that makes sense. I'm actually going to ask you guys a question for my pick before I make it here. I'm deciding between two players and I'm trying to figure out, do I want to go the safe route or do I want to go the volatile route? And if I ask the audience, I know that they're going to tell me to go the volatile route here. And it might be for the same exact name that I asked the question for last time. And if memory serves me correct, I don't think the volatile route exactly worked the time before. But do either of you two have an opinion when you directly look at Matt Wallace, who is playing really good golf entering this week, or if you want to go the boom or bust territory, Tom Kim?
Go ahead, Joe.
Yeah, I mean, I would probably lean Tom Kim. Just kind of based on pedigree. When we look back at where he's found success, it's kind of events like this, right? Like Shriners, where some of his wins have come. So I think he's the kind of guy that can pop up out of nowhere. And even though Wallace is playing good golf, I feel like there's just a level of built-in volatility there kind of by default with Matt Wallace. So I'd probably lean Tom Kim, Spence.
I'm going to make this even harder for you, Spence. I'm going to say Matt Wallace.
To me, safety says Wallace should be the correct decision. I ran this and I talked about it from Norlander. Wallace is a top 25 player in my model when you look at recent strokes gain total and you weigh it towards the course. You look at what Tom Kim has put together, and that's the one concern to this is you haven't necessarily gotten results from him. 83rd in my model in that territory. There are pockets of good with him, though. Like some of those matchups at that 8-0 that I went last week were fading Tom Kim. Like Tom Kim is not a golfer that I back very frequently. And I will say, whatever tournament that was in that I asked the question about, should I take Tom Kim? He did make the weekend. And if you look, the DraftKings offered that one contest during the US Open, if anybody followed it, to where if you pick a name to win, if they made the most birdies on Saturday or Sunday, you split the $1 million prize. Tom Kim wasn't in contention to win that golf tournament, but he made the most birdies and he won people a lot of money there. So I do think Tom Kim has the potential to spike at any given time. I guess for me, it just comes down to how safe do I want to play it? Like Tom Kim, the upside rankings think he's a top 15 player in my model. The safety rankings have him 64th. Matt Wallace is the exact opposite. Like, I don't know if I necessarily see a lot of that upside if we're talking about actually winning this tournament, but the safety ratings actually love him like much more than a lot of the players in this range. That is a long-winded answer to, I guess, go with, I am going to go with the player that I actually bet here just because he's 3% owned, and I will take a chance here with Tom Kim. this has every chance to blow up in my face. But if you are looking for the positives, any of those expected ball striking totals from a long-term perspective like him, any of the weighted strokes gained total, that's kind of fitting to the narrative that Joe was talking about. Similar courses where he finds success, and these Donald Ross properties is inside the top 10. So I think I might look back on this on Friday night, and this might be a 5-6 lineup that had Tom Kim miss. And I will wish I had taken Matt Wallace as he's in 13th place entering the weekend. But look, we're here to have fun. We're here to be different. We're here to give unique picks. I will take the upside here with Tom Kim.
Boom. All right. Tom Kim. And you're right. I think someone said in the chat, Courtney, the mighty have fallen with Tom Kim. He was a darling of the show, 3 years ago? Now, he got drafted tonight, so he's not completely off our radar. But you're right. That's how the trends go in golf. You got to find the hot players. Joe, you got a good-looking squad here. We need you. We brought you in as the cooler, and I will add a little layer here to this pick. You and the audience have a similar amount of left to spend. So one pick each, you got a little bit more to spend. You can maybe get a steal from them. How you rounding out your squad?
Yeah. I really wish I had another $100. I like Jake Knapp a lot at 7,300. He's a value play that's on my list this week. I'm gonna go. I mean, maybe I'm just getting a little bit nuts here, but I'm gonna go with Cam Champ, 7K. I like the distance. I like how he's playing. He's played well, guys, just not playing much. You kind of look at what he's done this year, which there hadn't been many starts. I mean, we all kind of know the deal. He's super volatile, a lot of injuries, but can play well enough to win golf tournaments, when things are clicking. And if you look at the numbers, things have looked really good for him in his limited starts this year. He gained 6 strokes tee to green and at the Canadian Open, had a top 10 there. Back in May at the CJ Cup, a T15, T16 in Puerto Rico in March, and that's really all he's played this year. But it's been encouraging when he's been out there. He's been boomer bust here, but we've seen good finishes from him, at this golf course before. So I think he's capable of going out there and doing it, and I'm willing to take a shot. I mean, we got Cam Young and Wyndham Clark, so we're just going to roll with the Bombers.
I think this is Exhibit A. If you're stuck, you're not sure where to go, you find the bomber in that range. That's your tiebreaker, and that's what you got here with Cameron Champ. And I wasn't really looking at him. I kind of had him off my radar, but as I looked into it as you took him, you're right. He hasn't played that much, but when you look closer, when he's played pretty well. He looks pretty good. So
I don't know if that's like a decision he's making, maybe with some injury stuff, just taking it really, really slowly. And he honestly might not be might not be getting in a lot of fields because he's had such a down period since his wins. But when he's been in action, he's it's kind of been impressive what he's been able to do if you look at the stats.
And he's one of the longest hitters in the field. So the course fit, if that's what you're looking for, he'll certainly have that. I think that's an interesting pick. I wasn't planning on playing much him this week, but I think I might get him some more exposure to him now that I've looked a little closer. So I like that pick. I am intrigued. Audience, you're up with the last, and it looks like the pick is locked in with Ryan Castillo. He went up the board here a couple weeks ago. Another ball striker, 7,100. I think there's plenty of upside. Yes, Spence, what do you think, Ryan Castillo?
I don't think the audience can afford him.
Oh, wow. Team audience trying to pull a fast one on me.
And there's no winner. No wonder they're winning every week. Y'all just let them pick whoever they want to. Stay on top of them, Spence.
I am glad you caught that. So team audience, you can't afford them. You got to stay within the rules, and they have to take somebody who's 7K or less. So still plenty of nominations in to get one more off the board. Wait for that next nomination to come in. Since he came, Spence, I'd love to get your take on Cameron Champ.
I hate the ownership. It is trending up and up and up. I kind of am very intrigued by the profile. We keep talking about distance and putting. There are very few golfers that put that combination better together than Cameron Champ does. He might be one of those names that ends up being good chalk down in this range and top 10s this tournament. I just want anybody to be aware that's listening. He also has the potential to come dead last. I kind of, in these spots, almost always veer towards these options and try to move in a different direction. But I'm kind of intrigued by Cam Champ this week. I think it's a really nice course fit for him.
You think he's going to be on, Spencer?
I see him currently now. I don't know if this is going to stay that way. I see him currently right now at 10.5%.
Wow. I was thinking like 5, but maybe
at 5%, I would love to take a swing at that. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, maybe I'm off. That's just kind of where I was thinking. But I mean, he's a known name, at a reasonable price. So, it could trend towards 10.
And he is one of the longer hitters at a course that, so I think people will see that trend, and he'll probably be higher owned than he should be. That doesn't mean you shouldn't play him.
Yeah.
Because he's not going to be 30 or 40%. So I still think he can play. Yeah. But he probably, because of the profile, probably a little higher owned than he should be. All right, we're going to lock that in. Last pick, team audience. We're going to go Antoine Rosner, 7K. You can't afford him. Proximity looks good here for his distances. He's striking the ball pretty well more recently. He made some putts. Rosner, a pretty good value pick for team audience. Audience, the streak is on the line. Can you get to 5 in a row? I like the look of your squad. That's a wrap for the draft tonight. Do me a favor and smash the like button. Give us a follow. It goes a long way. Spence is going to post the lineups this week. Let us know what team you think is going to win. We are going to crown a champion. Will team audience be able to extend the streak? Over the cooler, Joe nicely come in and break the streak. Maybe me or Spence. We will find out on Sunday. Before we get you out of here tonight, Joe, is there anyone you're surprised did not get drafted tonight on the show?
I mean, Cantlay didn't go, right?
Yep.
Cantlay's on the board. So, yeah, I mean, I think that's a big surprise. I mean, I get it. I kind of feel the same way. It's like you're not like fist pumping him in your lineup, but he's he's got a great pedigree. He's certainly a step above, the vast majority of this field. So I think that's surprising. But I at the same time, I kind of get it. I mean, I think a lot of people are like vibing Ben Griffin this week, Cam Young. A lot of people are vibing like these 9K guys. So we might see Morikawa and Cantlay come in lower than what we'd normally see in a tournament like this.
Yeah, Cantlay, I think, was one of the ones I was going to mention as well. What about you, Spence? Anyone you're surprised did not get taken?
Probably Cantlay. I think Joe kind of touched on it. There's a very strong argument, in my opinion, to be made to where if the Morikawas and the Cantlays of the world end up getting overlooked, they may end up being value in GPP contests. Like, I think there is a legitimate case to be made that Cantlay is potentially, if we're going to be doing a 4-man draft, he doesn't go off the board, and we start following suit with people moving down to play Ben Griffin, potentially moving up to play Morikawa. I made that decision myself. I could make an argument that Cantlay might be one of the 5 or 6 better plays on the board. I understand everybody hears that, and you just think of all the times that you've been burnt. I get it. I've been the king of getting burnt by Patrick Cantlay, but at some point, value becomes value if nobody's going to play him.
Yeah, I'm with Spence. I mean, when you really think about it, this would be a classic like Cantlay win spot. Like we know he's not winning in the majors, and he's going to pick off maybe like one of these a year or one of these little tournaments a year or something. So it wouldn't shock me at all to see Cantlay like win this thing. Honestly,
I think that's a really good point. I want to give you guys a value play I'm surprised didn't get taken, and that's Matthew McCarty. I think he's someone who at 7K has been playing really well. He's only 5% owned, which is pretty low. I think people are looking at his pretty poor showing at the U.S. Open and maybe getting turned off by him. But before that, he's just been excellent. And you kind of think you can excuse the U.S. Open, right? There was a bloodbath out there. I think he comes back, bounces back this week, and I think there's plenty of upside. I'm going to double down on that and say he's not only surprised he didn't get taken, he's also my bet of the week. You can get Matthew McCarty top 40 at plus 130. You get plus odds on that. I think that's a really good bet. I think plus top 40 is pretty safe. Right? He doesn't have to do anything crazy. Basically, a little bit better than making the cut, has a pretty good week, and you'll cash that bet. So love that bet. I won last week. My bet of the week was Ben Griffin, top 30. We're going back to a top 40 this week with Matthew McCarty. How about you, Joe? Do you have one bet you love this week?
Yeah, I mean, I think I hadn't went over the betting board probably like I should, but I think there's a lot of guys that are up there. I mean, you can grab at some big numbers. Like you can get Jaeger at 70. Spencer knows better than me, like 70-1. I think you can get what's Clayton Spencer around 40. I mean, I like these guys with upside that can go out there and potentially win this thing at pretty big numbers. So I would circle those two as good bets. I like McCarty as well. I think that's a great call, Joel. We've seen him kind of make his hay on the Corn Ferry Tour, going out there and making a lot of birdies. U.S. Opens and stuff aren't necessarily going to be his strong suit. He's really a putter, a guy that does it with the putter, and he can get really hot. So I like the McCarty call.
Boom, McCarty endorsed. Go ahead, Spence.
No, the McCarty call might end up being like the first group play that we ever all add after the fact. I really like that number, Joel. And I took Henrik Norlander with my second to last pick. If I did not take him, the pick was going to be McCarty. McCarty's a top 25 player in my model in almost all iterations of how I ran it. And, I talked about how much I liked Goddard up at the U.S. Open, and all of that was great. The other player that I had a ton of exposure to, and I agree with Joe on the surface level of it, maybe not the best course fit for McCarty at the U.S. Open. I thought he was going to make the cut. I thought he was a top 40 candidate there. I had exposure to him in both of those two areas, and it didn't happen. And for that reason, the market has moved in the opposite direction on him this week. I think that that's a mistake that's being done in all sectors of the market, and specifically here for DFS. It's hard to find these $7,000 golfers that are top 25 players across the board in my model. So I think a top 40 play makes a ton of sense there.
Boom, endorsed. I love it. Spence, finally, last one. Do you have a bet of the week?
I want to give something that's still out there. I bet Tom Kim over Max Homa. That number is gone. It's in the 150s now. So I won't give that one. If you can find that anywhere around the 120, 130 range, I still think there's value there. I'm going to say Steven Jaeger minus 110 over Taylor Moore. Taylor Moore's course history is phenomenal, but if you actually dive into how he's produced it, and in fairness, Taylor Moore seems to, at these courses that he finds success at, kind of have the same recipe of success over and over again, but he's gained like 11 strokes putting, 9 strokes putting, and like 6 strokes putting in those 3 top 10 finishes. He has absolutely no form coming into this week. The problem with that answer is all those other tournaments that he came inside the top 10, he also had no form entering those events. So maybe this is just the week that he always finds himself. And I do have some concerns about that. The only caveat to that whole thing that I like about it is I really like Jaeger this week. We talked about it at the beginning of the show when Joe took him at the 102. He's one of my favorite players on the board. So, there is a world where Moore underachieves, and that's great. And there's a world where if this ends up being a Titan sort of a battle, I do like Jaeger over 4 days against them.
Boom. Lock it in. Bet of the week. Before we wrap up tonight, Courtney in the chat threw out there, what about Chris Kirk? I think he's interesting. I'm not surprised he didn't get drafted, but I think he's in play. I think if he did get drafted, I also wouldn't have been surprised. Curious, are either of you interested in Chris Kirk this week?
I think he's safe. Great course history. I would expect him to make the weekend. Probably a better cash game play for me than a GPP.
Yeah, I agree with Spence. I mean, I think he's in consideration. I like the price. Kind of had an underwhelming year, but this is a spot where he could break out.
Boom. All right. And I'll also say 5-star logistics. That surprised Knapp didn't get paid. Joe mentioned him.
I really wanted Knapp. I just couldn't make him fit. I think I was $100 off. But yeah, I think he's a value play you can circle this week. We've seen him flash at times this year. Love his ability off the tee. He's improved with the putter. I think he had a T31 here last year. So he's seen this course before, and it profiles as a good fit for him.
The ideal blueprint to that, Joe, since I seem to be the king of that the last couple of weeks, is all you have to say is I ran out of money. or I miscalculated the total. And the miscalculation is what I normally go with that. And I miscalculated Tommy Fleetwood last week. He nearly won the event. So when Jake Knapp comes second this week, you just send the tweet out there. I miscalculated my lineup.
I was adjusting on the fly this week, guys. I'll be honest. I had some players that I didn't expect to end up with. Cameron Young and Wyndham being two of those. Cam Champ was in consideration for me, as a value play. But this lineup kind of worked out differently than I expected, which is what makes it fun.
Yeah, just very quickly, even on that, like, we're obviously getting nitpicky with this, and I like the Tom Kim selection that I made. There's a lot of upside, but there's a contrarian nature that comes into play. But if you could like hand pick any player that I could put on my lineup, I wish I could have Emiliano Grillo. But the problem is Grillo went in the very first round or whatever he actually did, and unfortunately, at the end of the day, you just can't get those players, and there's a lot of adjusting that has to happen on the fly. And sometimes the Tom Kims of the world end up surprising you, and I have a bet on him to win this golf tournament. I certainly think that's in play. And sometimes the implosion potential comes into play. And that's something that I have to live with this week with it, because I do think Grillo is substantially safer. I think their upside is comparable in a lot of ways, but it's just Grillo's a much safer option if you're looking for a made cut.
And those are the things you have to consider. And that's where contest selection comes into play, right? If you're playing a cash game or a 4-man tournament, I probably wouldn't take the risk on a Tom Kim there. You need to. But if you're going for a GPP, right, that's where it makes a lot of sense, right? A lower owned, has the upside. So, make those decisions based on what type of tournament you're entering that lineup in. I know we went over tonight, but huge thank you to everyone who joined and stuck around. Should be a fun week. There's money to be made. 3 more weeks until the Open. So guys are getting sharpened up, and we are super grateful for Joe nicely coming on, drafting with us. It's always a pleasure chopping up with Joe. Joe is the last guest to actually win on the King of the Draft. Audience, you got 4 in a row. You're going for an historic 5-peat. We brought Joe on to cool you guys off. Joe, thank you so much for your time this week. It's always a pleasure having you on. Where else can everyone find you?
Yeah, thanks, Joel. I appreciate you guys. Always fun jumping on and drafting with you and talking the slate over with you. I learn something every time. So I really enjoyed it. You can find me over at rotoballer.com, same place you can find Spencer. You can find me at Joe Nicely on Twitter, X. But I hope you'll think about checking rotoballer.com out. We got an amazing deal going. It's our best deal of the year. We're running it right now. You can use promo code SUMMER and get half off PGA Premium for the rest of the year. That'll take you to the end of 2025, and then it expires. But we still got a ton of golf left. Got a major left, got the FedEx Cup playoffs, and then we got the swing season. So I'd encourage everybody to head over to Rotoballer and use that promo code SUMMER. Take advantage of that. And
Joe is fantastic. If you watch our show, you probably already know who Joe is. But if in case by chance you don't, if you follow Joe, you will make more money playing DFS and betting. So make sure you give Joe a follow. Thank you, Joe. Spence, anything I forgot tonight?
As Joe said, use promo code SUMMER there. I will talk to the Rotoballer ownership and see if we can change that to be promo code Wyndham Clark or promo code Wyndham. Make it right in the wheelhouse there for Joe. But no, as Joe said, you can find the two of us over there. We have a ton of work. Joe Idoni's over there. We're going to get him on the show shortly. So, there's a lot of work out there. And just thank you for everybody who tunes in and makes this show a part of their weekly process.
I just looked it up, boys. Cam Champ, 90-1 first round leader. There's my bet.
An official first round leader play on the board as well.
Here we go.
Lock it in. All right, 90-1. Lock it in. Good luck this week. Follow along. We'll do it again next week.